So now we're into chapter 1209. I want to just run over a few more things to do with clipping masks. I've saved this file from the scrapbook file. The very act of doing that created a mismatch as far as the references went. So I'll just reiterate what happens. Document setup, and then under the references tab, originally these trees, which I've now relinked, couldn't find their path because obviously the path had been lost due to the resaving. So by selecting the reference and going relink and going back to my chapter 1201 folder, and then picking out tree 1, tree 2 and tree 3 for the relevant trees. That's tree 1, that's tree 2, and this is tree 3. Now these ones down the bottom are SketchUp files. Okay, so we'll just talk about the process of clipping. You might often want a tree to sit behind a house or off the side of the drawing or around some object, and just ordering the layers isn't necessarily going to give you that option, especially if it's referenced back to a SketchUp file and not a series of layers inside of Layout. So there is a very good reason why I'm explaining this process, and I'll show you a working example of that next. So these are clearly image files. You can see that. The beauty of them is they're PNGs, so you've got alpha transparency, so you get a nice sort of effect with them. The rest of them, however, you couldn't tell unless you zoomed right in whether they were raster images, vector images, SketchUp images, or what. We will do that. We'll zoom right in on this, and we can see that this is a nice clear line, albeit squiggly, and if I select it, you can see the whole line has been selected. So this one is a 2D vector sitting on the page in Layout. And if I wanted to create a clip mask of this, I couldn't. It won't allow me to do it. If I drew a circle around that and thought, well, I'll clip one to the other and then select them both, right click, all I get is the option to group. You just simply can't clip around these objects. So if I wanted this sort of effect and the option to clip, then I'm going to have to do something different. So this tree here is exactly the same tree as this one, but whereas this is sitting on the page as a 2D line drawing, this is linked to the page through the SketchUp file. So we can see this is rasterized at the moment. If I go down to the SketchUp model and change that to vector, then we get that vector file, but it's still linked. And whilst I can't change the color unless I amend it inside of SketchUp, what I can do is on the styles, as I pointed out previously, change this value to a thinner line, say 0.3, and then that will tidy that up a little bit. But what this gives me, because it's part of the SketchUp file and it's embedded in a window, I can clip this. So right click, create clipping mask, and now I've got that bit of tree inside a hidden mask. And if I wanted to reveal the outline of the mask, then that's just something that happens in the shape style. Turn on the stroke, and there you go. So massively beneficial to have this functionality. Whilst you don't get the ability, like I do with this type of thing, to change the color inside of Layout. If, for example, I wanted this to be a pink tree, then under my stroke, just drag that down to there, and I've got a pink tree for whatever reason I wanted. But this gives you the flexibility of the color change and line thickness, and again I can then group all this and go in and individually pick lines and change the thickness if I could really be bothered. But what it doesn't allow me to do is this sort of thing. So it's a really good idea to have options of both on the same scrapbook page. If I wanted to amend or release the clipping mask, then right-click on the clipping mask and then click on that. And the options you've got then are to reposition this and reset it, or make it slightly bigger. And then with the two objects selected, you can create the clipping mask again. Now this clipping mask does obey some of the rules of the SketchUp model. If I'm pulling this clipping mask out, then I can clip it even more, but it's not scaling. And that's because if we go down to the SketchUp model, I've got preserve scale on resize ticked. Untick that and I can scale it. If I just look at the images and create or shape around that, and then right click and create clipping mask, this however will scale, okay, because it's not controlled by that preserve, scale and resize. That's covered our clipping masks. In the final video of this chapter, and we're getting very close to the end of the series, I am going to use the trees in some of the elevations, and we'll create some clipping marks around and see how they can be used in context.